In the Approachables, I played bass guitar, and my name is Ben Van Dyke. And I guess I sang a little bit of backups, maybe a couple words.
My name is Phil, and I played keyboard and sang some vocals, wrote some songs.
I just would drum and provide a slightly wobbly beat to everything. And I don't know, just writing songs like most of the other dudes. And
my name's Adrian Boss, and I was the guitarist and I guess sometimes vocalist, rhythm guitarist and sometimes vocalist, sometimes lead vocalist for the Approachables.
I'm Marco, and I played guitar and keyboards and sang a lot of backups.
My name is Jason Stone. My role in the Approachables was playing the guitar. I was a lead guitarist, and I also smacked some tambourines and played a harmonica every once in a while.
I'm partially responsible for bringing the Approachables together. I'd like to take credit for at least a little bit of that. Basically, my earliest memory of meeting anyone from the Approachables would be when I met Adrian. And I met him on the first day of Frosh Week at the University of Waterloo. And we were in the same, I don't know, they put the kids together in groups so that they meet people on the first day and they have someone to hang out with for the next week while they're acclimatizing to the university experience. And he was in my group. So I met him because when I went in, they made you introduce yourself, and I said, "My name is Ben." And then they said, tell us one thing about you. And I said, and my favorite band is Eric's Trip. And then Adrian came in late, as usual, about 10 minutes later, and he was wearing an Eric's Trip shirt. And so they were all like, "Whoa!" And they made him sit next to me. And so that's how we met, and we started talking music right away, and we hit it off pretty well. And then about an hour later, same day, same Frosh kind of event, we met the other teams that were also from the general arts section of the university. And there was another kid who was looking like he was trying to enjoy himself but was not succeeding. And so I reached over and I was like, "Hey, my name's Ben, how's it going?" Because I was of the mindset that this is to meet people, so I'm going to try and meet people. And that turned out to be Dave Fox. And so from there, I brought myself and Adrian to Dave, and then Dave brought Jason and Marco, and we eventually met Phil, I guess, a year later as well.
I remember coming up from, I used to work at my mom's store, the Treasure Quest, and I remember driving up Saturday nights in the dark in the winter on the icy roads to come to these jam practices in the dungeon of downtown Kitchener.
dating back to 2000, I think it was, maybe. I don't think it went any further back. But I remember playing at the SLC was like our first show, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember the way the recording sounded and such.
I think the way I remember it was I was in a band called Guard with Dave and Ben and David Eby, and that band sort of, for whatever reason, started to fall apart, and we started jamming, and I think Dave and Ben might have been in another band with Phil called Moncherie at that time, and so I think maybe, I don't know exactly why everyone started playing together, but there was definitely this absence for me from Guard, so I wanted to get something going. My first real memories, I guess, are just random memories of playing in living rooms.
Jason brought over his crazy, fangled, actually good guitar as opposed to the crappy acoustic I had, and that day I think we decided to be rock and roll stars or something, and we went into the basement and pressed record on a ghetto blaster and wrote 3 songs in an hour. I think that's when it dawned on at least the 3 of us that music was fun.
Well, I guess Marco and Dave would be the first people I knew. We started playing music with each other, calling ourselves Little Girl, and starting to write songs with each other that way. I remember at Dave, our drummer's parents' house, they had a couple beat-up guitars they got from garage sales and things that I managed to tune and jam away on. But of course, jamming with all the members of the Approachables, I think, quickly followed thereafter.
Blue skies are coming, blue skies are coming. people are dying, dying to me. There are some people dying to me, trying to be. The clouds being business, open the show, put on the jacket and rake the leaf. Sit on the rooftop, sit on the rooftop and count sheep.
I mean, we never, as the Approachables, we never had a clear idea of what we were doing while we were doing it, which is part of rock and roll, sort of, in terms of authentic rock and roll, or, you know, why kids start doing rock and roll. Is we got together to play some music and write some songs, and I mean, that's what we were doing. We weren't really thinking about making any money, and we were definitely losing money. Or not losing it, but spending it. And I mean, each of us were probably there for slightly different reasons, but I think the main one was to like make some songs and play some loud music. And
I don't know. Mostly it was just, I don't know, being part of a group and making something cool, I guess.
Kind of like just in the business of like being like lazy and, you know, but at the same time we're coming up with really cool songs and then playing, but you know, no one's really the focal point, so an audience or something would have nothing to latch onto as far as like, unless they latch onto the entire thing.
The Approachables for me were probably about something to do on a Saturday night combined with, I mean, I really wanted to be a musician, I think. There was probably a lot of my identity tied up with that band because there wasn't much going on other than the band, because I spent so much time focusing on the band and spending time with the other 5 Approachables, so it meant a lot actually for those 3 or 4 years. In the back of my mind I thought too, at some point this might become a career, so there was that hope. I don't know if I ever let myself dwell on that too much. I mean, I put a lot of effort into the band. I certainly didn't treat it like it was just a pastime or something, but I don't know how much I tried not to think too hard about whether we'd make it or not, because I really didn't think what I heard ourselves playing I never really thought that it would catch on. Like, it just seemed to be for us.
I think it probably shifted over time. I think in the beginning probably we're all just on an adrenaline rush for quite some time. It was just fun. It was fun to get together and be understood musically, and you know, be in a room full of people that were generally cooperative in making something cool happen, or making something work together in terms of sounds and that sort of thing. I think maybe halfway through we got a little bit more serious, and that probably corresponds with the time where we ended up picking a name and that sort of thing. Maybe I probably can't speak for other people, but I know that for me anyway, aside from like enjoying the process generally, I think that I always had a bit of like latent desire to be a bit of a public figure or something like that, or at least have like the group be a bit of a public figure or something like that. Even if it was just in the area, I would have felt really happy if we could have made some ground in terms of, being known.
I never wanted to be in a band if it wasn't going to be fun. I never wanted to put that much effort into it. I mean, financially, being in a band, in an early band, is just a money hole. You keep pouring stuff into it, upgrading your equipment, and on and on and on. So it was always about fun. Being creative and having an excuse to, hang out with your friends in a different environment. That was always what was really important to me. I think it still is about that for me now, because I was never really concerned with any kind of success. I never cared necessarily if we played in front of people or not. That was never my big thing. I just like to work and refine and play that way and be creative and just have it. And the more of it that you have was always a big thing with me. I like, the song creation process, like coming up with a new bit or coming up with a riff or practicing a solo or beat, whatever it be. The ultimate performance was never that important unless that was going to be fun too, and it definitely was in a lot of cases. The Approachables actually, as a name, came from a line of an older song. But I remember there being a vote for names, and that was just sort of the one people were indifferent enough about to agree on.
It was a long, arduous process. My memory, I think we did it through email.
I think Dave came up with the name.
I remember the Approachables was, I think, Dave's suggestion.
Yeah, it was my name. To me, it was just funny because it reflected us being antisocial and having a name that implied that we were social or nice. I'm trying to remember some of the other names. I can just, off the top of my head, I can only remember Semaphore.
Although I really liked the Well Wild Hearts.
Talking with Dave about it recently, so I remember Semaphore now.
Sort of inside jokes about one person might have had, and I don't know. I can't think of anything else other than Sasquatch, the Bigfoot.
But there were very few songs that I could say they were about something on the surface. We wrote collaboratively. I'm sure we all pitched lines that would have seemed completely random to the rest of the band, but to the person who submitted or pitched the line, probably had a lot of meaning. So it ended up being this song about that each person could walk away thinking something completely different about it. Some of them were just absurd for the sake of being absurd, like Snowy Bobips, or writing songs about, we did like the Paul McCartney thing, writing a song about an absurd sort of character, right?
Definitely didn't have a message, and like a lot of what we ended up writing about were just bizarre character sketches. We had a song about like an elderly lady falling in love or something. It was Silver Velocity. There was Apple Betty about like some wandering farm girl with a locust cloak, and we had Le Shark, which was about a rich bastard guy that was like running around trying to get girls in his SUV.
I always thought the characters in these songs were the Approachables, and the band was just performing their, kind of stories.
The funny thing is, like, I'm pretty sure a lot of it wasn't intentional, and I've always found it interesting that like the six of us could collaborate on a lot of those, and each like provide segments of those songs, and still like in the end they managed to be coherent in some way.
Well, definitely, I think humor was a huge part. I mean, the lyrics were always sort of poetic in a sense that they didn't really have a literal meaning always. I know Dave's sense of humor often came into play in his lyrics. Like one of the later songs was about having a spider wrap its fingers around, I think the lyric is the chest, but it started out as wrap your fingers, like a spider wrapping its fingers around my cock or something. And that was sort of funny in that Dave would have to make Adrian sing that. So there's always, a definite, like, the audience is always against you. I mean, it's your goal to win them over, and if you can win them over doing something that they shouldn't be, applauding, then that was always pretty funny and cool.
I mean, we used to get Bare Naked Ladies a lot. People would say that we sounded like the Bare Naked Ladies. And I think that was just because they didn't know. That's the only band they could think of that was maybe used humor. I mean, there are definitely other ones out there, but I think that's one of the biggest bands that you've got. Like, who else? Bloodhound Gang, or like, there are very few bands out there at the time that would be considered funny bands. But I think we used it in like a radically different way. I mean, I always was sort of offended because obviously I didn't really like them that much, but offended in that, I mean, I thought the songs might have been funny, but they were oftentimes just, they weren't out, there were no punchlines. I don't think there were ever any punchlines, and if they were funny, I mean, it was only because there was some really inventive wordplay. I mean, even I think it reflected the music itself. Like, there were so many odd and weird changes going on, and the lyrics, I think, are great. They're awesome. Like, I think they're funny, but they're often funny, and the humor is just masking some sort of angst. Like, I always thought the lyrics were pretty angsty, and that they were always hinting at something, but never quite saying it. And I always thought they were really evocative. So there's a lot going on there, and if you can look past the fact that maybe you've never heard words put together in that way, if you really think about it, I think there's a lot there. It was great to go and play with the Approachables and write this absurd, happy stuff, and it was sort of a mood regulator in a way. Like, and so there was no desire, I think, on anybody's part, although I'm sure I'm just thinking about myself here, but I don't remember there being a desire to write depressing songs, or to write about love lost, or about maybe real things that were actually happening, because it was sort of an escape. That's my memory of it anyways.
The song's called 5U.
Dig us. Okay. All right. Dig us in 5 minutes. Aiden's gonna tune.
And now, from the deepest unknowns of Kitchener's sewer system, ladies and gentlemen, the Approachables, featuring Marco Pedrosa, Dave, the
All right.
That's our next.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Dig us! Damnation!
We'd like to thank the James's Party for celebrating its 52.
Shit, yeah!
Us here tonight. Thank you very much.